Links to previous episodes are given in the video description, so don't forget to like, subscribe and share the video. Her Silent Howl. Episode 8. Markus POV. A boy and a girl. We were having a boy pup and a girl pup. I could feel Atlas doing flips in my head and howling with happiness. What more could I ask of our moon goddess? I felt like $1,000,000. We were headed to Mexico tomorrow, so Celeste had wanted to cook for the pack house. I wasn't too keen on the idea, but it was hard telling her no, so instead, I asked Melissa to help her with the promise of bringing back a few gifts from Mexico. I'm pretty sure she would have done it anyway. She flocked to Celeste anytime she had free time and Celeste loved spending time with the young girl. I was eternally grateful she had someone with her while she was mad at all of us. We were all packed and ready to go. I had a few more things to go over with Danny and Evergreen. I had asked for them to look for any information on the pack we were visiting. As much as I wanted to trust Celeste's long-lost relatives, I was not willing to simply go on faith. We were on our way back to have lunch before meeting with them. I helped Celeste do some quick preparations for dinner. She was making pot roast, so she asked me to put the roasts in the ovens so they could begin cooking. Atlas and I were quite pleased to help with the heavy lifting, though I feel like Celeste may have been doing it to placate my overprotective instincts by the way Dad smirked at me at the thank you kiss Celeste gave me as we were heading to our meeting. Whatever, I would take any pity thank yous as long as they came with kisses. Evergreen was staying in the pack house while he finished all the security upgrades. He would remain here until we were back in case we needed quick action. "Gentlemen, what have you found?" I said as we sat in the conference room. Our office was still being finished and Evergreen would be setting up some new gadgets. "Quiet, as far as I could see," Danny said. Evergreen nodded in agreement. "Their finances are all up to par. They have about 400 pack members. The pack is quiet, keeps to themselves. There are not many packs nearby, so they have no conflicts to speak of. I couldn't find any debts. According to my satellite info, they are a pack of farmers with supplemental income from tourism. They mostly live off the land, but they do have some modern comforts such as utilities, several cars, and even found an internet connection in the main pack house. Other than a couple of incidents with the law for lack of a driver's license by some pack members, nothing to note. I dug as deep as I could. Any information on rogue attacks or local crime I should be aware about? I asked. Nothing out of the ordinary. There's not much record of rogue attacks, but I can't be sure. As I mentioned, they mostly work the land, so they don't really keep day-to-day on a computer. And you confirmed that we will arrive tomorrow? I asked. Yes, I spoke with Alpha Diego via Zoom yesterday. He will be having some of their men pick you up at the airport. I nodded in agreement. Anything else? Danny, do you have anything else you need me to take care of before we leave? No. We're all covered. Should be okay, he said. I turned to Evergreen. He pulled out a package. I've got an encrypted laptop and a satellite dish. You should have a signal from 9 a.m. to 12 noon local time. I'll be monitoring messages and phone calls coming in and out of the pack. If something appears off, I'll send you an email through this encrypted laptop. I will connect it to their network and keep it online until you have read the message. Is that not a little extreme? Celeste asked. We're supposed to be going in good faith to meet my relatives. For normal people, yes. For me, no. When it comes to protecting not only my alpha, but my Luna, the pups, and our beta, I'd rather not risk it. You will be isolated, alone with but a few warriors and in a different country, he said, and I saw Celeste's skepticism turn to warmth and understanding. Speaking of, I know Luna is mostly fluent. I've installed an app in your phone Alpha and Beta Jillians. I've also stuffed an emergency envelope in the lining of the phone pack. It's got about $10,000 USD in Mexican pesos, fake passports, and some contact information to associates of mine that I know we can trust. This is why I pay you the big bucks, Evergreen. Thank you. I hope we don't need all of these measures, but I will feel better to have it with us. I stood up and patted him on the arm. See you at dinner. Celeste is making pot roast, I said, and his eyes brightened at that. As a traveling bachelor, he rarely got home-cooked meals and had become another aficionado of Celeste's cooking. Tulai, are you sure you're okay? I asked her again as we got ready for takeoff. Celeste was sitting next to me. I had been feeling her nerves all morning the closer we got to the airport hangar. I knew they were stemming from her, but wasn't sure what the problem was. It wasn't the usual nausea that had plagued her for a few weeks. Those seemed to be getting more infrequent. Celeste nodded but gripped the seat as the plane started moving forward, and I felt like a crazy. Celeste had never flown before. I put my arm around her and pulled her as close to me as I could. She grabbed my shirt and held on until we were in the air and the flight stabilized and she finally started relaxing in her seat. Sorry, she said as I unbuckled my seatbelt. I smiled down at her and kissed her forehead. It was only a 3-hour flight to Mexico City. We'd be arriving in time for a late lunch in the city before we were driven to the pack house. The stewardess came by and offered us some refreshments. I made sure to order whatever Celeste ordered. At this close proximity, I wasn't going to risk whatever I ordered not to give her nausea. I noticed Jillian, Zach, Gabriel, and George, who were used to being around pregnant Celeste, did the same, while the others ordered different things. It was all good until someone decided to have a snack and Celeste's oversensitive nose caught the smell of sour cream and onion chips. I felt the wave of nausea hit me from her as she bolted for the little bathroom. I heard Gabriel growl and saw him snatch the chips away from one of the other warriors as I headed for the restroom, where you could hear Celeste throwing up her breakfast, my glass in hand. I heard the water running before the bathroom door opened. I passed her the iced tea. She quickly drank it down and then put her forehead on my chest while I rubbed small circles on her back. I'm sorry, Luna, Mateo said as we headed back to our seats, I didn't think about your morning sickness. Celeste smiled lightly. It's not your fault. It's just the enclosed space. I have some granola bars in my purse that Maya gave me before we left if you're still hungry, she said. Mateo shook his head and we continued to our seats. We had brought an extra 5 guards with us. 3 of them had never guarded us before, being warriors that tended to be out in the field when issues arose, but they had the advantage of knowing Spanish and used to adapting to volatile situations. I felt Atlas in my head lowly whining as we asked for more iced tea. What's wrong with you? I asked. He made Celeste throw up. he said, which confused me. Celeste has been throwing up at random things for the last month. I reminded him. Yes, but Kara is grumpy. She's saying this is all our fault again, he grumbled, and I couldn't help the laugh that bubbled out of my mouth. What's funny? Celeste asked, smiling at me. Kara is mad at Atlas. She's blaming him for the nausea. She raised her right eyebrow at that. Well, she's not wrong. Is she? She asked me. Well, I mean, I started stuttering, my face paling until she just burst out laughing at me. I'm just messing with you. You should see your face. Kara is just sick of losing our lunch. Everyone behind us started laughing and I turned around and growled at them. A few stopped, but the others just seemed to laugh louder when they noticed the redness in my face. Even Atlas was laughing on his back in my head. That was mean to lie, I grumbled as I sat back on my seat. Would a kiss make it better? She purred, pulling my shirt to bring me over to where her soft plush lips were waiting for me. Maybe, I said after we came up for air. I tugged her onto my lap and we napped like this for the rest of the flight. Mr. Salonen, we will be descending shortly. We require your partner to take a seat and put on her seat belts, she said, and I frowned slightly. This was a human crew, so it was normal they wouldn't know who Celeste was to me. That didn't sit quite right with me and made a mental note to remedy that as I helped a sleepy Celeste back onto her seat. We landed a few minutes later and I was glad to see Celeste was a little less nervous on the way down. A few of our warriors descended first before I helped Celeste down the steps of the plane. There were 3 long black SUVs waiting for us when we arrived to transport all 11 of us to their pack grounds. I approached the man in the front waiting for us. Alpha Markus, Luna Celeste, the man said in a heavy accent. Welcome to Mexico. I am Gamma Tomas, he said as he extended his hand out. Celeste POV. I looked around as we exited the airplane. The first thing I noticed were the mountains in the distance. They were more breathtaking than when I did my research on the area. Sadly, I didn't have much time to admire the view. Zack and Gabriel were still behind us. I saw Zack look around as he exited the plane and shake his head. He then retrieved some yellow-tinted glasses and put them on. He smiled at me and said, "Much better." "What's much better?" Gabriel asked. "Now it looks like in the movies," he smirked, "yellow-tinged." Gabriel punched him in the arm while laughing. I chuckled. Markus and I headed down the steps of the plane. I could see 3 really long SUVs with several men in front of them. We approached what looked to be the leader among them. He was not a tall werewolf. In fact, I think I was taller than him. He was wearing a light t-shirt and jeans, dark-skinned and defined jaw. His dark eyes and curious smile could have made many girls swoon. He didn't seem at all intimidated by the 6 feet tall men approaching him. He gave me a curious look before extending his hand out to Markus. "Alpha Markus, Luna Celeste, welcome to Mexico. I am Gamma Tomas," he said in a very thick accent. "Tomas, thank you for coming to meet us all the way out here. I appreciate your Alpha allowing us to visit." "No worries at all. We will always welcome one of Seleni's descendants," he said as he bowed deeply to me. "My Alpha sends his apologies. His duties don't currently allow him to leave the pack grounds." He is very interested in meeting with you both. As are we, Markus said, and in the lull of the conversation, my stomach decided to make itself known. I blushed. Sorry, I kind of missed breakfast, I said. Markus and I had decided that until we could make a decision on trusting them, it was better not to tell them about the pups. Tomas laughed. All good, señorita. We have picked an amazing taco place for you to have lunch. It's a place we all enjoy eating at when we come out this way, he said as he led us to the SUV. I could see Jillian mind linking the warriors so that they divided in so that at least one Spanish speaker was in each vehicle. Jillian, Gabriel, and Zach all filed into our vehicle. One of the SUVs behind us went past us before we started moving. We stopped at a small storefront with a line-up going out and around the corner. Perhaps we try another place? Jillian asked, looking at the line-up as we slowed out in front. Nonsense, I know the owner. They are expecting us. They own the house behind it. We are eating there. There's no sitting space in the restaurant, Tomas said, as the driver found a parking spot and we filtered out. Where are the other vehicles? Markus asked, looking around. Right around the corner. Tomas answered, and as he finished speaking, the rest of the warriors turned the corner on their way to us. We headed into a little house around the back. There was a big table and a few kids running around. When they saw everyone, they all seemed to run into a bedroom. I guess 11 strange 6 feet white men will do that to you, Tomas laughed. I giggled along with him. I could only guess what they must be thinking. A petite sun-kissed young girl drying her hands on an apron came down from the second floor. Tomas, she squealed and ran the rest of the way down. Por que no me dijiste que venías? Why didn't you tell me you were coming? Le dije tu papa. Vengo nomás de pasada. Tu papa me dijo que nos hace el per de darles una buena bienvenidas de tacos a los gringos. I told your dad. I am just passing through. Your dad said he'd do us the favor of giving them a warm welcome by feeding the white people. Avail, de jam voy por unos menus. Mientras, cuentales que hay para beber. Ahorita vengo. Okay, let me get the menus. Ask them what they want to drink in the meantime. I'll be back. Come. Sit. She's getting menus. Beers for everyone, he asked, and I swallowed bile. Anything but beer, guys, please, I mind-linked the rest. Actually, we've heard great things about your horchata. Jillian said. Claro. Of course. Everyone wants the same. Tomas asked. We all nodded as we sat. The young girl came back and gave us some menus que para beber. What are you drinking? Que todos quieren horchata. Everyone wants horchata, Tomas said with a shrug. Pos ven ayuda entonces. Nos traemos unos de los garrafones que hizo mama. Come help then. We'll grab one of the containers Mom made in the morning. Pardon me for one moment. I must help her get the drinks, Tomas said. Anything sketchy? Markus asked via mind link. Not outside of being called white people, I giggled as I looked at the menu. You guys know what you want? Tomas said. I'll take whatever you have in beef. I will leave it up to what you think we would like, Markus said. There were a few chickens and steaks, and then he came around to me. "And for you, señorita?" he asked. "Dos de lengua, uno de siso y dos de trompo," I said. "Two tongue, one brain, two pork." He looked surprised and pleased. "Me dijeron que usted era familia pero no que sabía español. ¿Ha probado los tacos de siso antes? No son para cualquiera. I was told you were family but not that you spoke Spanish. Have you tried the brain tacos before? They are an acquired taste. Mi mama me enseñó. No he probado pero se me hizo la boca agua cuando los six. Ay uno de tripa por favor. My mom taught me before she died. I've never had them but my mouth watered when I saw them. Oh, and one intestine please. Bueno, salsa." I nodded. Markus cleared his throat and Tomas smiled. "I'll be back after I tell them the order." "What just happened?" Markus said. I could tell he was stressed, that he didn't know what was being discussed. He was out of his element here and wasn't comfortable. He just asked me about my order. He said it was an acquired taste. "Relax, love, I will not talk about anything important without including you," I said as I took his hand. He sighed and kissed the back of my hand. The food arrived and we were too busy eating to talk. Everyone seemed to be enjoying their food after a first glance at my plate. "What's that?" Jillian asked, as my dish looked a lot different from everyone else. "You sure you want to know?" Tomas asked with a grin. "Yeah," he asked tentatively. "These two are beef tongue. This one is cow brains, this one is cow intestine, and this one is pork," I said as I pointed to each one. I saw Zack look at his plate as if it had sprouted legs, looking for anything weird in it. "But my sour cream and onion chips gave you morning sickness," Mateo laughed but quickly quieted when Markus growled. "You are pregnant?" Tomas asked. "Well, that was in the open a lot sooner than we wanted to." I nodded. "I will ask them to give us some capirotada for the trip back. It helps with the nausea," he said. "Since the cat's out of the bag, you mind keeping that beer away from me? It kind of makes my stomach turn," I said. Tomas laughed. "Your warrior is right. How can you eat brains and intestines but something like beer makes you throw up?" he said as he went and put his beer back in the fridge and grabbed a glass of horchata instead. I shrugged and dug in. It was delicious, and the pups and Kara both seemed to enjoy the food with me. Even Markus tried the beef tongue and wasn't adverse to the taste. After eating and thanking the owner for such a wonderful meal, we were once again on the way. Tomas assured us it was about an hour and a half away. "I wish we could have kept the pups hidden until I felt safe," Markus mind-linked me. "I know, but not much we can do now. We didn't exactly tell the other warriors to keep it under wraps," I said. "I don't sense any ill intent from them." "I don't either, but we've yet to meet the rest. I don't like having this many factors out of my control." I laid my head on his shoulder and allowed the sparks to soothe his worry. I didn't realize I fell asleep until Markus nudged me awake. "I think you will want to see this," he said and pointed out the window. I gasped. There were mountains to either side of us. All around us was natural beauty, the sinking sun making everything look magical. Markus pulled me onto his lap so I could see out the window better. His hands slowly petting the tiny bump hidden by my blouse. I spent most of the rest of the drive with my nose practically plastered against the window. I started seeing little buildings here and there and we finally hit a town called San Juan Tlatotenco. We're only about 20 minutes from the pack grounds now, Tomas said. We went through the middle of the town and were almost to the edge of the town when I saw something. Stop! I said and we screeched to a halt. I opened the door but Markus was holding onto to me. Celeste, he asked. That place Markus, I said, pointing. I know that place. He followed my hand to where it was pointing and I saw as he realized why I recognized it. He let me go and climbed down behind me. I walked towards the Cantina de la Loba. It looked the same as it did in my vision. I walked inside with Markus hot on my trail. Tulai, we can't, Bella? No, no pude ser. Bella Murio, no, it can't be. Bella died, I heard someone whisper from over the counter. I looked at her. She looked familiar. I think she was on one of the pictures we found in the deposit box. She came around the bar and towards me. Tu pelo este mal, y tu piel no es tan moria y tu ojos. Your hair is wrong and your skin is lighter and your eyes, she said as she looked at me, but it was like she was talking to herself. Celeste? She asked me now. I nodded. Pero por la luna. Te pareces tanto a Bella, by the moon, you look just like Bella, como conocías a mi mamá? How did you know my mother? I asked as Tomas came into the bar. Mama, ¿estás bien? Mom, are you okay? His mom ignored him, then in a very thick accent she asked, can I hug you? I was going to say no, but there were tears streaming down her cheeks, so I nodded. She closed the rest of the distance and hugged me so hard, I heard Markus growl. Mama, dígale es la pareja del Alfa de Estado Unidos, Mom, let her go. She is the mate of the Alpha visiting from the US. She reluctantly pulled back, grabbing my face with her hands. Your mother was my best friend. I was here when she met your father. I went to live with her for a few years, but I came back to visit my mother who owned this bar and found my mate. I thought you were dead, she cried. Alpha Diego is waiting for them, Mama, Tomas said, and I felt Markus put his arm on my shoulder. Perhaps we can come back another day? We are here for a week, he suggested. I nodded. I would like to know more about my mother, I said to her. Of course, come by any time, she said as we headed out. Wait, your name? I asked her. She smiled. Lupe. 20 minutes later, we went through a set of gates deep in the mountains. We were let through and we passed fields of farming before the road opened up to a large space right before the mountain. The pack house seemed to have been built right into the mountain. It was both impressive and beautiful. There were tons of windows carved out of the mountains and a giant set of double doors. This is impressive, Jillian said as we exited the vehicle. It is strategic. There was a time our people were in a war. The cover of the mountains ensures only one way in, same with the pack house, a man waiting for us at the end of the steps said as he approached us. He smiled at Markus as he stretched his hand out. I am Alpha Diego. Welcome to the Mountain Moon Pack. He turned to me then. Welcome to your ancestors' home, Luna Celeste. You look just like my great-aunt Azalea. He turned to Markus. With your permission, Alpha? I would like to hug my cousin. Markus nodded and Alpha Diego gave me a quick hug. Come, my mother has cooked for you all. I will show you to your rooms and give you a tour. If you need to speak to the outside, we get connection between 9 am to 11 am. If you have an emergency, you will have to leave the mountains and head back to San Juan. We can talk about the family legacy tomorrow. Markus POV. This was going to be such a long trip. I wish I had spent more time trying to learn Spanish. It was looking like I would be waiting for someone to translate for me all week. It made me uneasy. How am I supposed to react if something threatens us if I have to wait to have it translated for me? Atlas had been pacing all day and it was driving me nuts. At least Alpha Diego was speaking English to me, but all around me, all I heard was Spanish. I had my Spanish-speaking warriors in strategic points along the table. I tasked them with keeping an ear open for any kind of threat, but I didn't like feeling like I was in the dark. We were currently in the dining room eating some sort of spicy dish. It was delicious, but I had to admit to being on my third glass of water. The red rice was especially tasty. Despite the heat, I had cleaned my whole plate. Celeste was currently talking to Diego's mother about the recipe. So, Alpha Markus, have you encountered Huitzilopochtli yet? Alpha Diego asked. I don't believe so. I told him. Your people know who Celeste is, do they not? I nodded. Then it is probably just a matter of time. I would be careful who you show her gifts. The more people know, the easier he will find her. He has killed many of our people, though he never bothers much with the males in our bloodline. He wants to kill his sister. The one that fought against him and his mother. My great-aunt and my grandmother died to the monster. We have since only had boys on my great-grandmother's line, but my great-aunt's branch had a few women. We thought we had kept Bella safe by sending her so far with his mate, but we heard what happened. We believe he found her. But Celeste's parents were killed by a neighboring pack, I said. No, Bella's father Alpha Jose, sent his people to try to find Celeste. They were unable to find her, but they encountered Huitzilopochtli also looking for her. My uncle believed that he was ultimately responsible for her death. How? We're not 100% sure, but if he was there, he had a hand in it. Is my grandfather alive? Celeste asked. I hadn't noticed when she had started listening. I'm afraid not. He passed 8 years ago. Having lost his mate and his only daughter left him heartbroken. His wolf died and the pack passed to me as the only living heir of our bloodline. Well, at least at the time, I was. With you back, the pack is yours by birthright, should you wish it. I was taken aback by his statement and I could see so was everyone around the table who understood him. You would just give up your alpha title, just like that, without a fight? I said incredulously. It is hers by birthright, Alpha Markus. My people, her people would follow her. I would follow her. We do not hold the same standard that a woman can only be Luna. She would be the Alpha, he stated simply. My pack is Crescent Moon. It was destined by our moon goddess Selene. Koyalzaarki. I will not doubt her wisdom. As far as I can see, the men and women here are well cared for. Unless you need to be removed for their safety, I can assure you, this is your pack cousin. Celeste stated as she took my hand. Atlas purred in my head. Alpha Diego inclined his head at her. Thank you, if there's ever anything we can do for you, we will gladly respond. Enough heavy, Alpha Diego's mom said, making us all laugh. Let us dance. She said as everyone got up from the table, it's not every day our long-lost people come home for a visit. A seal brar. Celeste started laughing as we followed them out to the front of the pack house. The area had been cleaned and set up into a dance area with tables and chairs all around. There was Spanish music playing from some speakers. We moved to an area and I noticed my warriors all standing at attention around us. They were good warriors. Do you feel safe here, Tulai? I asked Celeste. Yes, do you? She asked. I do, I responded, then I looked back at our warriors. I believe we will be fine. Why don't you go have some fun? I told them. All but Zack began to move towards a group of women that seemed to be dancing with each other. Not interested in some dancing, Zack, I said as I noticed one woman making her way towards us. Don't know how, Alpha. I have 2 left feet, he said as his face reddened. The woman reached us then. She was quite pretty. Her light chocolate skin shining against the light of the moon and lights. She stood in front of Jillian, who was staring at her as if frozen. ¿Bailas conmigo? She asked him shyly. Jillian was still frozen, just standing there. She said, dance with me. Celeste leaned over and nudged him. It seemed to bring him back out of his stupor because he suddenly blushed as the she-wolf laughed and said, I promise I don't bite until the 4th dance. Jillian's blush deepened to a darker shade of red as he stumbled upwards and allowed the she-wolf to lead him to the dance floor. Can I teach Zack? Celeste asked. Can you teach him what? I asked. To dance, she laughed. Of course, love, but save me 1 or 2, I answered. Come, Zack, we'll have you dancing before the night is over, she said. Zack visibly paled and looked at me. Just keep your hands in the safe zones, I laughed, not that I had anything to worry about. In the months he'd guarded Celeste, he had been nothing but respectful. When Zack still didn't move, Celeste huffed and pushed him to the dance floor and I realized he was more scared to dance than a jealous alpha mate. I'm surprised you let your mate dance with someone else. Alpha Diego came and sat down, offering me a drink. I trust Celeste and I trust my guard, I shrugged as I watched Celeste trying to show Zack how he should be moving his feet. Zack had a permanent blush on his face. I could hear Atlas laughing in the back of my head. Most alphas are not keen on anyone touching their mate, he said, looking at me as if I was an anomaly. Most alphas don't volunteer to give up their alpha status either, I countered and he laughed. You would if you were raised by my mother. I have lived under the shadow of strong women. They routinely kicked me growing up. I tipped my drink in his direction. Zack was now trying to learn how to move his hips and there were a few females looking and giggling. I looked over to Jillian and the she-wolf. They seemed to not be aware of anyone else on the dance floor. I thought back to what Celeste had said earlier about Jillian finding his mate. I'd never seen him this interested in another woman before. It was still about 5 days until the full moon. Maybe. My head turned back to Celeste as I saw a woman approach them. I saw her talking to them and Celeste taking a step back with a smile. She turned to look at me and gave me a come hither look. Pardon me. I believe I am being asked to dance. I put my drink down and walked over to Celeste. Do you need a lesson too? She teased as I reached her. I grabbed her hand and spun her around a few times. I'll have you know, they teach us salsa dancing during alpha training, I said as she giggled into my arms. Really? She asked. No, but Jillian's mom made both of us take dance lessons since we were 8 years old, I said as we danced. 2 hours later, I could feel Celeste's exhaustion. I think it's time to sleep, Tulai, I said as I picked her up bridal style. She only snuggled into me in response. You can all enjoy the evening but care of your alcohol consumption and care to not disrespect our host pack. We are heading to bed, I told Jillian and warriors. Yes Alpha, they responded. I passed by the table Alpha Diego and his mother were at. Thank you again for hosting us. We will see you in the morning. Yes, we have much to talk about, Alpha Diego said. I carried her up to the suite. I removed her shoes, her shirt, and pants. I tried to dress her, but she just grunted and curled into the bed, so I removed her bra, locked the door and then stripped down to my boxer briefs before I climbed into bed with her. I put an arm around her tiny bump and I could feel the pup's heartbeats, strong and steady as I fell asleep. My eyes fluttered open as I felt Celeste's hands in my hair. I saw her long tanned legs in front of me. I'd somehow ended up with my head on her lap. She was sitting against the wall. Good morning. Liking the view? She teased. It's magnificent, I growled as I gave her belly a quick kiss. Good morning pups, I said, cover your ears. You're about to hear Mom and Dad play. Celeste laughed and squealed as I got up and pulled her down by the legs so she was laying on the bed. I groaned as I felt myself release into her. I laid down next to her, panting. I pulled her to my side, waiting for our breathing to even out. Celeste POV. I fell asleep again, only to be woken up by my growling stomach and a chuckling Markus. We should shower and grab breakfast. Today might be a long day, he said as he helped me up. We showered and headed down to breakfast. Alpha Diego's mom grabbed me and led me down to the kitchen the moment she saw me, yelling at Markus to go wait in the dining room. Are you okay, Tulai? He asked me while I was being dragged away. Yes, she wants to teach me some dishes, I answered. Mrs. Rodriguez taught me to make chilaquiles, huevos de varicators, huevos rancheros among other dishes. We worked together for about an hour, enjoying chatting and pumping out the food until she gave me a plate of chilaquiles and told me to go join Markus before he accused her of slave labor as she finished the last of the plates. I walked into everyone eating happily. I noticed Jillian was sitting next to the woman that had asked him to dance yesterday. I shot him a wink as I passed by and I heard him trying to say a word correctly. He blushed and it made me laugh a little. He's been practicing all month, I told her when she turned around. Luna Celeste, I can tell. Nice to meet you Luna, she said with a small laugh. He'll be fluent by the time he leaves. I know English but prefer my native tongue. Plus it's adorable to see him try. Not many make the effort, I nodded. Yes, he's a good man. Treat him right. I told her as I patted him on the back and kept going until I reached Markus. I only understood half of those words. Do I want to know? Jillian's voice reached me. I wouldn't be a good Luna if I wasn't willing to be a wing woman, I said as I dug into my food. Well, thank you. I think, he answered. Hey, you did all the hard work. I just gave you a nudge, I said. I don't know what that means, he said. You will. I laughed and cut off the mind link. Tulai, Markus asked, is that going to be who I think it's going to be? I hope so. He looks smitten already, I said. So his mate will be Mexican, he asked me. I could feel his curiosity through the bond. Yes. I think so. How was your breakfast? I made it with the help of Mrs. Rodriguez, I changed the subject. It's delicious. I've never had something quite like it, he said, showing me his clean plate. Mom's always been a gifted cook, Alpha Diego said proudly. Yes, I can't wait to try some of these recipes when we get back home. Hopefully I can learn a few more before I go, I said enthusiastically as I took another bite. We chatted amicably for a little while as I ate. Once I was finished, Alpha Diego gave us the tour of the grounds. It was really amazing how self-sufficient they seemed to be. They farmed, processed, and canned a lot of their products. There were drying racks filled with peppers we had used this morning. They even had some refrigeration carved into the mountain that used the coolness of the rock with minimal electricity to store their meat. Although the pack house was built into the side of the mountain, we hadn't realized that even the parts that didn't face the outside were so light without requiring electricity during the day. Alpha Diego pointed to a bunch of thin skylights that seemed to lead to the top of the mountain. It was always cool despite the summer heat, he assured us as he led us to the back. He opened a door. This is what you came here to see. This is our, how do you say, Hall of Records. This is where the entire history of our family is stored. We walked in and I was speechless. 3 of the walls were covered in family trees. Some were blank and short, some branched off to show many generations. There were books on pedestals all around and shelves littered throughout the room. Our family has been here for many generations. As we've discovered information, or have had other siblings of the moon goddess reach out, we've attempted to document as much as we could in the hopes that one day, we would have enough to put a stop to Huitzilopochtli before he ends all of our bloodlines. Many of the women in our family have kept journals. Some men, too. Your mother's is here, he said as he pointed to a set of journals in a binder. Even after she left with her mate, she sent us her entries via email, he laughed. It was the reason my great-uncle bought his first computer and connected us to the outside world with internet. They are all printed. I reached for my mother's journals. I noticed my hands were shaking as I let my fingers trail down the spine. I felt the all-too-familiar pull as I went backwards in time. I saw her, on a small ledge above the pack house. She was smiling as she wrote in her journal. Her tan skin and wild brown hair blowing in the wind. I was pulled forward and back into the room. What just happened? Alpha Diego asked. I turned and he wasn't looking at me but at Markus. You saw? I asked him. He nodded. She was beautiful, he said. I smiled. Ahem, Alpha Diego cleared his throat, waiting for an answer. I have the power of sight, I said. Yes, I know. Your mother wrote it in one of the journals, but I saw his eyes go white, he said, pointing at Markus. I nodded. Markus and I have a deep bond. He is able to share my gift. Alpha Diego looked surprised at that. I've never heard of that happening before. He gets his own visions, he asked. I shook my head, he only shares it. I had the vision and he can see it with me. This is new, he scratched his head. I wonder if everyone after you will have this ability. It would certainly up the game if someone has an offensive power. Do we tell him? I asked Markus. Let's wait a little. Maybe we show him before we leave, Markus said. I nodded. Are we okay to look around Alpha Diego? I asked. It's just Diego. You are my cousin after all. You can look around all you need. I will bring you some snacks, he said as he exited. Where do you want to start? Markus asked. I looked at my mother's journals. As much as I wanted to read them, we needed other information first. Let's try to find information on Huitzilopochtli, I said. He's the threat Selene warned me about. Okay. At least everything seems to have labels. You start on that side and I will start over here, he said, pointing to a shelf near him. We began looking at the books, seeing if any of them would give us any new information on Huitzilopochtli. We sat there for hours. Jillian joined us at noon, bringing us lunch and grabbing a few books to read, but I sent him off to spend time with Camilla after 2 hours. How did you say the name was spelled? Huitzilopochtli. Markus said, giving up and bringing the book over. He'd been struggling to read anything at all, his Spanish was basic at most, but he was looking for the name in the books. Huitzilopochtli, I said, and took the book from him. There was a big picture of the warrior from the vision Selene had shown me. This is him, I said. I read underneath. There was not much. Huitzilopochtli, god of sun and war, brother of moon goddess Koyalzarki goes by, Ra the Egyptian sun god. Helios the sun god of the Greeks. Surya the Hindu sun god. Inti the Incan sun god. Kinicheho Mayan sun god. Markus, I gasped. What? Helios. In one of the visions I had when I visited Selene, Luna Luisa had mentioned getting a prize from Helios in exchange for Mom and me. They must be the same person. He found us and must have made a deal with Blood Moon to get to us, but they ended up. So Alpha Jeff was never after your mom for her powers? He asked. I don't know, but I'm sure he pushed them to attack my parents, I said, and I could feel tears of rage roll down my face as I held my stomach protectively. We won't let him get to our pups, Tulai, he said as he gathered me in his arms. We know he's coming. We know what he looks like. We will be more prepared than your parents. You're not alone. Everything okay? Diego came in as I sobbed into Markus' chest. Yes, it's just hard for her. She's dealt with all of this alone for so long. I understand. Mom wanted me to ask Celeste if she wants to join the preparations for dinner, but I can tell her she can help another day. He said, but I looked up. No, I want to learn all I can. You know, would you be opposed to digitizing all of this? Markus asked Diego. How? He asked. It's generations of handwritten records. At one point, I tried to have people start typing it, but it was just too much. Evergreen, the man who reached out to you on our behalf. He is a tech genius. If you're not opposed, I can have him come out and take a look. I'm sure he either has or can make some sort of software program to get it all digitized. It won't hurt. I often worry something will happen and all of these records will be lost forever. I will contact him. Maybe he can even join us here, Markus said, looking excited at the thought. So, what is your mom making? I said. Mole. Come, I'll show you to the kitchen, Diego said as he led us out. Tulai, are you sure you're up for more cooking? Markus asked me, worry in his voice. Diego looked confused. Is she sick? Did Tomas not tell you? Markus asked. She's pregnant. Madre de Dios. So this is why your guards seem so on edge when they aren't actively guarding you? I swear I've seen them all pass by this door every time I've come near. Markus laughed. They love their Luna, he said simply. I hope you know, I did tell them that we were safe while inside the pack house. It's their instinct to want to keep protecting their Luna while not in their own land. Rest assured, no offense is taken. Now that I know she's expecting a pup, I will make sure to double the guards at the gates, Diego said. Pups, Markus corrected. We're expecting twins. A double blessing. Come cousin, he said cheerfully to Markus as we arrived at the kitchen. We will celebrate. Don't worry about your mate, Mom will be doting on her hand and foot. She loves pups. Markus POV. The next couple of days passed by fairly quickly. Evergreen joined us the next day, in the evening. He went straight to the room, came back out, took my credit card to buy some generators and has only come out to eat and sleep. We've gone in there a few times to help him, but it's like he's going through Wi-Fi withdrawal. He was short-tempered and keeps checking his phone only to grunt and put it back down. It turned out that there already was the technology to digitize all of the books and journals in the room. They would be scanned and a digital copy of the journal would be stored for future reference, but a software would also extract the document's writings and pictures, and not only would it create a typed script of the page, but could translate it to whatever language you needed. An index was being generated for easy search function as each document was being scanned. It was quite impressive, but we were all scared to let him know lest he call us all primitive brutes and shut the door on our face. Again. Jillian came and sat next to us as we talked outside a couple of hours before lunch. Someone will have to go grab him at lunchtime. I have been barred from the room for the rest of the day. Diego laughed. What did you do? Last night, I was asked to leave very politely but firmly after I thought the machine was broken, and he told me that he's not a miracle worker. He can only get so much amp out of the generators and he doesn't understand how someone can live without Netflix. I am apparently not to be trusted after he discovered I mislabeled a page under another index, Jillian grumbled. It seems the only one that can do no wrong is the Luna. He's all rainbows and sunshine talking about possible pup names with Celeste before I got kicked out. I am beginning to understand my cousin has that effect on just about everyone she meets. Tomas hadn't gotten his mom to come into the pack grounds in almost 5 years and she's come to the last 2 dinners, he said. She is fiercely protective of her loved ones and they her. Everyone that gets to know her loves her. But man, wait until you've been on the other side of her tempu high love. How's the scanning going? I said as I saw her coming out of the pack house with a glass of lemonade. Everyone at the table was smirking at me. On the other side of my what, Markus? She asked casually, not moving from the door. Help me, I mind-linked Jillian as my mouth bobbed open and closed. I've already taken from one moody wolf today. I don't need to add hormonal pregnant she-wolf to my day, Jillian laughed. Celeste raised an eyebrow and was waiting for me to answer when Lupe's bike came out the rows of maize. She walked up to Celeste and led her inside. They were beginning preparations for tomorrow's full moon. As 3 other packs were coming, their small numbers just made sense when trying to find their mates. I sighed with relief as I saw her retreat when I heard her in my head, if you think talking with the guys about your mate is something I'm going to forget, you've got another thing coming, my love. I groaned as the guys started laughing. Are you in the doghouse, cousin? Diego said laughing, the big mighty alpha, scared of a tiny she-wolf. I noticed only the ones without mates were doubled over laughing. The ones mated had sympathy in their eyes. Yes, well, if I show up at your suite tonight asking to hide me, you better open the door, I said as I looked back at the door. I can't wait to hear how you guys put your tails between your legs when you find your mates. One of the older mated males laughed at that and tipped his beer at me. Every male thinks they can handle a woman until they get mated to one. I always enjoy watching their faces fall as they realize who the weaker actually is. Diego's eyes glazed over. Intruders at the river, he said as he stripped, shifted, and started off. We all followed suit. The mountain had mostly one way in and one way out, but occasionally, someone managed to find an underground water river that provided them with a water source. It took a lot of strength to fight up the river in order to make it to the only climbable entrance to the pack grounds. Diego told me it always made for either an easy capture or a frightening fight. Anyone who could make it up was either exhausted from fighting the river, or strong enough to do major damage if they had enough time to regain their strength. Markus. Celeste's voice came into my head. I'll be fine Tulai. I need to help, I answered her. I heard her sigh in my head, making my heart clench. I know. Please be careful. I love you. I love you more. See you in a little bit, I said as I heard the fighting and cut off the mind link. We followed Diego's wolf Tenok down into a cavern. The growls of the other wolves echoed through the cavern, but what surprised me was the clacking of what sounded like staves. We arrived in time to see 2 men fighting against 6 werewolves. They did not smell like werewolves themselves, but they also didn't smell human. They smelled like more. It was hard to describe. They had inhuman strength. They were wearing nothing but a loincloth. Their copper skin glittering with sweat and water. 3 werewolves were in their human form, fighting with sticks, trying to make openings for the wolves to strike. Somehow, it didn't seem like they were winning. I waited for Tenok to do something so we could follow his example, but then he surprised me when he shifted back into his human form. It's them. Go back. He must have figured out Celeste is here. It's the only reason they would attack. The borders are safe, but Huitzilopochtli has ways around the mountain. Go protect your mate. We'll handle these guys. Otto, Atlas, and Zack's wolf Perseus turned around with Atlas's roar. We were halfway back when I felt Celeste's panic and anger, making Atlas push to run faster. I saw only one man in front of the pack house surrounded by wolves. I circled around towards the front doors of the pack house. I couldn't see Kara outside, which means Gabriel must have kept her inside, as I could not see his wolf out here either. Celeste. I mind-linked him. She's in the records room. Evergreen, one of their warriors, and I are guarding the door. Good. Keep her there, I said. She is fighting us, Alpha, he said. Tie her down in the room if you have to. They are here for her, I told him and cut off the mind link. Tulai, stay in the room, I begged her. Markus, I can fight, she said. No, the pups come first. It is just one man. We can handle this, Atlas answered for me. You can't expect me to hide while you're in danger, Atlas, she growled, and I could feel her struggling against someone. You can and you will. I will not risk the pups. He shut the mind link after that, hoping she would heed his words, and we turned our attention to the man in front of us. Aside from the light, somewhat modern clothing he was wearing, he looked exactly the same as in the pictures we found in the books. Entergan ala lobat ala que peleo contra me. No tengo pelea con ustedes. Ella pagara los pecados de sus ancestros. Give me the she-wolf, descendant of the one that fought against me. I have no quarrel with you. She must pay for the sins of her ancestors, Mateo's voice came into my head. Atlas growled. One of the wolves shifted back, Diego's mother walking to the front. Has echo suficient dano? Pied pertinent tu hermana. Deja atus hermanos en paz. Nadi aqui apileto contigo Huitzilopochtli. Vite en paz, y nadi te ada cara. You've done enough harm. Ask your sister to forgive you. Leave the rest of your siblings' children to live in peace. No one here has fought against you. Leave in peace and no one will stop you. Mateo Huitzilopochtli roared and rocks fell from the sides of the mountains. Entonces morirán todos por solo una pura, he said, and a turquoise staff appeared in his hand. Then you have chosen death. All of you will die for one by woman, Mateo stuttered and didn't finish the original wording, knowing it was Celeste he was speaking of. Everyone growled at that. The male wolves took a tentative step forward while most she-wolves took a step back. The staff began glowing red. The bottom of the staff began undulating. What's the plan, Markus? Jillian asked, as Otto moved in front of a she-wolf. There was no doubt in my mind that this was Camilla's wolf. Wait for the pack to make a move. We cannot attack on our own. We can't coordinate an attack, Atlas answered. I could sense frustration from everyone through the mind link. Suficient, Huitzilopochtli said, and I saw in horror as a wave of lighting left his staff. It was directed at Mrs. Rodriguez, but thankfully a wolf barreled into her side and the lighting hit the rock behind her, leaving a scorched mark. Everyone rushed the god of sun and war. You could hear growls and whines of pain as we tried to make it under his turquoise staff. He wasn't the war god for nothing. I saw as wolves were sent flying by the force of his staff, Occasionally, you could smell the burnt flesh as they were hit by the rays emanating from it. "We have to get the staff away," I growled at my pack. "Find an opening." I was interrupted as there was a blast that seemed to go in every direction as if a bomb had gone off in the center. We all hit the ground at once. Some of us faring better than others. "Sufficient. La pura o la muerte," he screamed. "Enough. The woman or death," Mateo groaned into my mind as he struggled to stand. Markus POV. Atlas shook off the hit and was about to charge again when the door to the pack house opened and out came Celeste. Long black curls blowing in the wind and eyes glowing fire as fire dripped from her hands. If she wasn't in danger, I'd take a moment to admire how fearsome and powerful my mate looked. But I did not have a moment, and Atlas began running as we saw Huitzilopochtli shoot his staff in her direction. We almost barreled into her as she rolled away from it in time, throwing her own fireballs at him. She landed standing next to us in wolf form. I had never seen anyone shift as fast as she had. Carol lifted up on her hind legs and stomped back down to the ground with a roar, and I stared in awe as two giant blades of fire rose from the ground and rushed at Huitzilopochtli. He dodged one but roared when the other one hit him across the right side of his body, sending him flying at the wall of the mountain, burning everything in its path. For a few moments, it looked like the fight was over, but we weren't that lucky. Though his side was scorched and rubble had fallen on top of him, he opened his eyes and began to dislodge his legs from the rubble. Kara began charging towards him but stopped when we heard movement from the side. Huitzilopochtli smirked, thinking his warriors were coming with backup, but then his face fell when he saw Tanakh running in front of the other warriors, a head in his jaw and the other in the jaws of his beta. He turned to look at Kara. Atlas quickly moved in front of her. "He esperado mucho tiempo para encontrar a la perra de Chantico. Esto no ha terminado." He spit blood onto the ground as he got out of the rubble. "Hermanita. I've waited a long time to find the dog of Chantico." "This isn't over, sister," Mateo said in my head. "I owe that man a raise." With Diego closing in, he bent his knees and jumped, somehow making it all the way to the top of the mountain and disappearing over the side. Atlas quickly turned and growled at Kara as he sniffed her abdomen. While not dangerous to shift during most of the pregnancy, the roll on the ground could have hurt the pups. Kara growled back but allowed us to make sure the pups were okay, then huffed and trotted back into the pack house, hitting Atlas in the face with her tail as she pivoted away. Atlas whined at the action and then ran after her. Atlas receded as we went into the house. "Do not walk away from me, Tulai," I yelled after her. Kara turned around and growled at me, then shifted to Celeste, who looked even more angry than Kara was in all her glory. "You do not get to tell me when I can and can't help fight for those I love. It is my right. It is my birthright. You forced me to hurt my friends. Just because I am carrying your pups doesn't give you a right to dictate my actions. You are my mate, not my keeper. You said you understood, but they were just words," she said, and I understood why she was angry, but I was just as angry as her this time. "He wanted you. He would have spared every person in this world to get his hands on you," I roared at her, making her pause. "I will forever choose your wrath, then your death," I told her calmly. I turned around and walked out of the pack house. I left her standing in the middle of the hall. I pushed through the crowd gathered at the entrance and shifted, needing to run off my anger. How could she not understand she was my life? That her death meant mine. There was nothing in this world for me if something happened to her and the pups. I would burn the world to the ground if she wasn't in it. I didn't get very far. As much as I felt we were running at a fast pace, Kara was faster. She caught up to us and stopped in front of us. We ran around her, not stopping, but she caught up to us again and again, until we stopped just short of the border when she barreled into us. Atlas growled at her but she stood her ground, her long black fur blowing in the wind, her red furred tips and runes glowing against the sun. Celeste shifted again and walked to a tree nearby and sat on the ground. She patted her lap and Atlas only hesitated for 2 seconds before he walked over and plopped on top of her lap. She petted us as our anger dissipated, only sighing occasionally. Atlas turned his head towards her stomach, placing his ear against it, letting the sound of their heartbeats calm us. Finally, he pushed back to the recesses of my mind. I could feel him talking to Kara through the bond. I didn't move my head from her stomach. I wasn't ready to go back to the world that consisted of more than us in this moment. "I'm sorry," was all she said. "I'm sorry too." I kissed her stomach before I sat up and cradled her to me. "We can't keep fighting every time there's danger. We need to be in sync. That's how we win," she whispered. "All I can think about is you getting hurt. Everything else just goes out the window," I confessed. "Then train with me. I can't let you fight my fight alone. We're supposed to be a team." "I know, I don't know how to turn off the need to protect you and them," I said, placing my hand on her belly. It was getting bigger by the day. Soon, there would be no hiding it from the world. We will work on it together. We are safe for now. All of us, she said. We stood there quietly until I heard movement and tensed. "I asked Jillian to bring us some clothes," she said. I sighed and nodded. I met Jillian a little bit away from where Celeste sat, holding her knees up to her chest. "Everything okay?" he asked. I nodded. "We'll be back shortly," I said. We got dressed and walked back holding hands. When we came into the open area, we saw the aftermath of the fight. "I'll go help with the wounded." "You help them clean up?" she asked. I kissed her forehead. "Yeah, that sounds like a plan." Before she could leave, I asked, "What did you do to Evergreen, Gabriel and Pablo?" She grimaced. It wasn't a fair fight, considering none of them wanted to hurt a pregnant Luna. "I will apologize when I find them." I laughed and shook my head. "Remind me to give them a bonus." I walked over to Diego. "Did you lose anyone?" I asked him as I helped him turn over a grain trailer. He shook his head. "We had a couple of close calls and injuries being tended to, but no loss." "How did he know where to find us?" "No one knows where we are but my Gamma, and he would die before betraying us." "I can answer that, Alpha." Evergreen came out of the pack house with a black eye. "Celeste's doing, I was sure." "How?" I asked. Luna had mentioned the blood moon, Luna talking about a deal with someone named Helios. She believed it to be Huitzilopochtli. "I contacted the pack a few minutes ago. Danny confirmed you should have an email from the council explaining that they have found the body of Luna Luisa in no man's land." She had been dead for about a week. Her body looked to have been hit by lightning. He pointed over to the scorch mark Huitzilopochtli's staff left and could see a lightning pattern spreading outward in the rock. He may have been watching the pack after extracting information and seen us leave. What about Sandra? I asked. There were signs of a struggle, but no body. They believe her to have escaped or taken, he said. Of course. Thank you, I said, turning back to the task at hand. Alpha, he said yes. I turned back at him. Gabriel could use a talk. He's not very happy he got overpowered by the Luna. He was talking about failing to protect her as he was trying to open the record room door. Luna had put a metal bar through the door handle. I sighed and nodded. Thank you, Evergreen. I'll be sure to talk to him. Just so you know, I am not ashamed of being beaten by our Luna. In fact, I'm going to try to milk this for some brownies when we get back, but the man takes his job pretty seriously, he said as he turned back. If you are both okay with it, I'm going to go back to scanning. I would like to be done before we head home. I looked at Diego, who nodded. Yes, that's a priority. We've got the clean-up. So my cousin. Diego started as we continued to upturn farming equipment. She's got more than one ability. Yes, I said, her fire ability started when she got her wolf. I grunted as we worked. Does she have any more? He asked. I was tempted to tell him about the healing, but since it wasn't hers, I just shook my head. Just the two, as far as we know. He nodded. Whatever you guys need. I hope you know our packs are bound by blood. You need only call and we will show up. Thank you. The same goes for you. If he comes back, just give us a call and we'll bring the backup. After working for about 15 minutes, he looked at the destroyed crops and nodded. Let's go check on the wounded. Nothing to be done about the crops. Things will grow back. If you need any help at all to replace them, we can help. It wasn't much. A couple of less tortillas a meal and we're back on track, he laughed as we headed towards the makeshift area. I watched Celeste cleaning a wound. As soon as we got near, her head went up and she turned our way, a giant dazzling smile forming on her gorgeous face when she saw me. Mrs. Rodriguez took over the cleaning as she whispered something to Celeste, who laughed and walked over to me. What's so funny? I said as I pulled her close and kissed her. Oh, nothing. She said mischievously. To lie. She just giggled and walked towards the next injured she-wolf. We'll be cooking in a couple of hours. We might need your help with the pots. Go relax with the guys, we've got this covered. There's only a couple more that need help. Most will be healing well on their own. I shook my head and walked towards Diego. He handed me a beer and we sat down. I looked back at Celeste and noticed Gabriel standing a few feet away. If she moved, he moved. Never quite behind her but never far away. He was a good warrior. Evergreen's got a black eye. How did you fare? I asked him. I saw him stiffen as he heard me. Broken rib and a failed assignment. I'm sorry, Alpha. I didn't think she would take on all three of us. She's the daughter of 2 alphas and stubborn. It is not an easy assignment. I should have tied her inside like you suggested. He sighed. No, I was wrong to suggest it. You're a good warrior and a good guard. She still managed to put herself in danger, he huffed. Yes, well, have you met her? I laughed and I saw him snort. Celeste POV. It's the morning of the full moon and I was excited for Jillian. I was pretty sure Camilla would be his mate. I had not failed to notice how he kept gravitating towards her. They spent almost every moment together, always looking like they were in their own little world, unaware of everyone around them cheering them on silently on the sidelines. There was another pairing I had seen. One of the female warriors seemed to have caught Gabriel's eye, even if he never seemed to get himself out of guard mode long enough to approach her. They kept getting pulled around each other as if by magnets all week. Never touching, but always in each other's direction. I was already devising a plan so I didn't lose him as a guard, but he would still be happy if my instinct turned out to be right. I had grown to like him a lot. He was smart and loyal. He had a goofy side to him when he allowed himself to relax. We had put a bunch of meat in some slow-cooking holes they had in the grounds last night. Mrs. Rodriguez said it was an easy and tasty way to handle preparations for the full moon dinner. All that would be left to do was heat the tortillas, cut up the toppings, make the salsas. But first, I made my way back into the bedroom. Markus was still sleeping and I'd managed to get Lupe to bring me a can of whipped cream from her cantina before the night was over. He was going to learn not to talk about his mate to his buddies. I had hidden his clothing under the bed so I could get away after the deed was done. I struggled to contain my laughter as I put the whipped cream in his outstretched hand. He almost ruined it when he stirred, but he just mumbled something and kept sleeping. Kara wouldn't stop chuckling in the back of my mind as we poured almost the entire can on his hand. I hope you're ready to run. Kara laughed. Just make sure you give me some of that speed. We make it out of the room and we're in the clear, I said. I grabbed the feather I had borrowed from Mrs. Rodriguez yesterday and tried to tickle his nose. His nose twitched like Samantha in Bewitched and I could feel my laughter just under the surface. My eyes were watering. I needed to hurry. I tickled his nose again and he made a weird noise as his twitched his nose again. I tried one more time and this one was the winner. He brought his hand to his face to scratch and smeared the whipped cream all over his face. I got up and ran to the door. What, he growled and then noticed me folded over laughing at the door. Tuli, he yelled as I slammed the door shut and ran. I was close to the end of the hall when the door slammed back open and he thundered after me. Where are my clothes? You will pay for this, Tuli, he said as he ran in nothing but his boxer briefs, face full of whipped cream despite having tried to wipe it. Talk bad about your mate again, I yelled as I ran into the kitchen and hid behind Mrs. Rodriguez. I heard laughing as Markus walked towards the kitchen. The anger on his face had a few scampering away, but I could feel he was struggling not to laugh through the bond. You will pay for that woman, he thundered. Now Alpha, you wouldn't hit a pregnant Luna, would you? Mrs. Rodriguez chided. Oh, I wasn't thinking about hitting her, Mrs. Rodriguez, Markus said as he smiled, his canines elongating, looking at me like he was the big bad wolf and I, Little Red Riding Hood. Well, then. You may proceed, she said with a chuckle, and left me standing on the other side of the counter. Alone. Markus put his hands on top of the countertop as he circled around like prey. My, what big hands you have, I teased. The better to lift you with, my dear, and spread those legs apart. He added via mind link. And what big eyes you have, I said, a shiver going through my body. The better to see you with, my dear, and watch, and what big teeth you have, I stuttered, my legs starting to go weak. The better to eat you with, my dear, I'm going to savor you until you've screamed my name out at the crest of your pleasure 5 times, Markus added as he stalked forward. My knees had become jelly at his responses. He grabbed me, put me over his shoulders somehow without crushing my stomach, and started towards our room. Breakfast is in 30 minutes. Mrs. Rodriguez called out as he marched us towards the bedroom. I could hear men hollering in approval and women giggling as we passed by. We made it to the room and I heard as he locked it. He gently laid me down on the bed. He nestled himself on top of me, spreading my legs with his. He held my arms up above my head. You woke up really naughty today, Tulai. What is a good punishment for naughty girls? He said as he nipped my shoulders. 5 is all I could say. 5 what? He said 5 times. Are you sure that's what you want? He said. Yes. Markus, please, I begged. Markus, please, I begged him. For what? I wasn't sure. My entire body was humming at this point. He collapsed next to me, one hand across my belly. An eternity later, we were finally catching our breaths. 5, he said as he kissed me tenderly on the lips, and I laughed. What did you do with my clothes? He asked. Under the bed, I said as my stomach growled. Come, let's shower, he said as he got up. I tried to follow, only to find my legs were still made of jelly. He gave me a knowing smirk and picked me up and took me to the bathroom. He set me on the sink while he tempered the water. So, big day for Jillian, he said as he stepped between my legs. I wrapped my arms around his waist. Yes. Gabriel too, I think, I said. Oh? You didn't tell me about him. It's just a feeling, I said, or a hope. I've seen him pulling towards one of the warriors, but he takes his job too seriously to go mingle. That is not a bad thing, Tulai, he told me, kissing my head and tapping my legs. No, I just want him to be as happy as you make me, I said, wrapping my legs around him as he carried me over to the shower. I thought, if it happens and she accepts him, that maybe we could try her out to be the pup's guard once they grow up a little. That way their assignments would let them travel together with us. I told him of the plan I'd been formulating for a few days. Point her out to me when we go to breakfast. If she's a good warrior, I think that's brilliant, he agreed as he lathered my hair. Jillian POV. There was something different about tonight. Not the usual anticipation of a full moon run with new she-wolves. I had one thought in my mind. Will Camilla be my mate? Otto and I had been fighting to control ourselves all week. Never had we been so tempted. We've always been able to control our urges. Mom had always told us how sacred and important the mate bond was. Even though we were almost 27 now, we had never relented. Camilla was different. She evoked so much in us. I tried to explain it away. She was exotic. Her soft voice with that thick accent sent shivers down my body. Just thinking about it was giving me a semi. We'd gotten close. So close. I thought as I remembered the way we'd found ourselves in my room yesterday after the attack, letting our bodies say what our mouths couldn't. I couldn't do that to her though. She had a mate and she had saved herself for him. If we were not her mate, I didn't want to think about it. I knew I was falling hard for her rich sun-kissed skin and chocolate eyes and joyful personality. She was selfless and reckless. She was the Gamma's daughter, and though she hadn't trained to fight, she had refused to hide when Huitzilopochtli threatened her pack. The need to protect her had been too much for Otto to resist, and we had tried to hide her behind us. Something that had not gone unnoticed by her. I had never wanted something as much as I wanted her. From the moment I saw her the first night, I could not get her off my head. I grew up hearing stories from Mom about how mates could feel the pull even when it wasn't the full moon, and I wanted to believe this was it, but it had also been almost 8 years' worth of monthly disappointments. We could always ask her to be our chosen mate, Otto had been telling me all week. We can't do that to her. I argued for the 70th time this week. And what if what happened to Alpha Alexander happened to us? Otto whined in my head. No, we couldn't do that. All we could do right now was pray. Pray that this was the last full moon we would look up at the moon and pray for our mate. I knew she was nervous too, and that was a small consolation. I hadn't even had the heart to ask her if she'd be willing to leave for Arizona with me if we were mates. Planning for a future that might never be was too much torture to think about. I walked into the records room around noon. I hadn't seen Camilla at breakfast today, but it was my turn to help, and above everything, I cared about Celeste and Markus. "Where do you want me to start?" I said to Evergreen. He turned to look at me and pointed at a stack. "Those are all the same index. I pulled them for you." I rolled my eyes. One bad index and suddenly I was an incompetent nincompoop that couldn't be trusted. Whatever. I wasn't in the mood, and this would make this easier. We worked in silence for an hour. Usually, I didn't mind the silence, but today it was all I could do to not scream. I needed something to distract me from the upcoming full moon. "You think we'll be done before Sunday?" I asked. It was only 2 days from now and it still seemed like the scanning was endless. How this man managed to keep his sanity, I didn't know. He was in here 15 HRS a day pretty much every day for the last 5. "We should be done tomorrow at this pace," he said, and continued to scan. I sighed, so much for a conversation. He was not usually this dry and grumpy. He was dedicated and passionate about his work. Slightly immature even at times when he wasn't on the clock. I think he was going through tech withdrawal. Aside from a TV, an old computer in the common room, and a slightly more modern computer in the Alpha's office, and this room, that was it for technology. In all the time I've known him, I've never seen him without multiple tech devices on him or around him. I think the only thing keeping him sane was the need to finish the job. Markus had told him he might need to stay back a couple of days with a few warriors to finish the job, and Evergreen had looked as if he was threatening to kill his puppy. The door opened and Celeste walked in with a plate of food. She was wearing a dress Markus had mentioned earlier today had belonged to her mother. It was lacy and off-white, her tiny bump was growing rapidly and it suited her. I know pregnant women said that morning sickness was usually the reason for the glow, but Markus said he hadn't known of any morning sickness since she came here, but she definitely glowed today. The extra spice in all the food seemed to soothe the pups. I had been meaning to thank her for making me use that language app. My broken Spanish and Camila's only slightly broken English had helped break the ice. That and whatever she'd told Camilla that first night. Since we arrived, my Spanish vocabulary had almost doubled. Can you go help Markus? He and Diego have to go grab some items for tonight, get the barbacoa out of the ground, and then in the afternoon, we need you around to welcome the other packs. Diego asked we meet everyone officially. I'll take over for you. She placed a plate on Evergreen's desk and turned back to me. There was a weird smile and a twinkle to her eye. We made empanadas with some leftover meat from dinner last night. Make sure you grab a few on the way out. Easy hand food. Yes, Luna, I said, happy to be out of here. The overthinking was killing me. You can't keep missing meals, Evergreen. I didn't see you at breakfast again, I heard her chide as I closed the door behind me. I chuckled. Evergreen had gotten food while they were romping around before breakfast. I can only imagine her face when Evergreen told her so. Everyone had seen the remnants of the prank she pulled on Markus and could guess what had happened after he'd shut himself in the room with her after he carried her back to the room caveman style. I walked past Gabriel on his way to the records room. I met Alpha Diego, Markus, Zach, and Mateo at the door. Where are we off to? I asked. Diego wanted to show us to one of the properties that belongs to Celeste. I confirmed with the lawyers that they have the deed among the documents we found in the safety deposit box. Then his mom asked that we get some more ingredients for today's. It seems a dozen extra wolves have drained her reserves for the full moon dinner a little more than she had realized. Markus said as his eyes narrowed at me with a smile. He was excited about something but he didn't seem to want to share. He and Celeste had been acting a little weird all week and I wasn't sure if it was some sort of pregnant couple thing or planning to murder me and bury me out here. No, this happens every full moon we host. She always has enough, but the thought of coming up a little short terrifies her. So then we end up eating the same thing for days after. Diego laughed. We had been driving for a while when Markus mind-linked me. So, are you excited to go home? Markus asked, a little too casually. I narrowed my eyes at him through the car mirror. I guess, it is home after all, I said suspiciously. Markus was never one to beat around the bush. Right. He was quiet for a while. Do you like it here? Mexico, with all the señoritas. Are you trying to tell me something? Are you trying to leave me here, Alpha? I asked. What? No. Why would you think that? He said. You and Celeste have been really secretive lately. Now you're being weird. His face went red. I am not being weird. I was trying to make conversation while you're either dumping me on this pack or killing me and burying me in the middle of nowhere. You wouldn't be this awkward otherwise. He crossed his arms and looked away from the mirror. You're being ridiculous. Are you still hiding something? I said, not buying it. Our chat was interrupted as we pulled to an old house in front of a lake. Wow, this is beautiful, I said. Yes, Aunt Bella's parents liked to come here many times with her mom when they were little. It was a place where they could just be a family, without pack responsibilities, he explained, but come Markus, there was one thing I wanted to show you. We walked into the house. Despite it being old, it was very well taken care of inside. We have been taking care of it since my great-uncle passed. We found this in one of the rooms. He pointed to a trunk. I thought maybe you and Celeste would like to go through it tomorrow and see if you want anything from it. Markus opened the trunk and a big grin spread on his face. It was full of toys and baby clothes and blankets. Do you guys not want to keep anything for when you find your mate? He asked Diego. Diego shook his head. These toys belonged to Bella and I believe a few even belonged to Celeste on the few occasions Bella brought her to visit. It's all yours if you want it. I'd like to take it all then. I want to surprise Celeste when we get home, he said, and I could see the gears turning in his head. How are you going to get that home without her noticing? I asked. Should be easy enough to distract her while they load it. He smirked at me and I rolled my eyes. Help me load it into the car. We were not back until close to 6 p.m. I still hadn't seen Camilla and I was getting nervous. What if she wasn't even here tonight? I thought as I unloaded some of the barbacoa. She won't be out until the full moon is about to begin, Tomas said to me from behind. I turned to look at him. You're looking for my sister, right? I fought a blush and nodded. There's an alpha that has been asking her to be his chosen mate. He's 34 and needs a Luna. Camilla told me she was going to accept his offer for the sake of the pack after last month's full moon and we fought about it a lot over the last month. That man is crazy and I don't him harassing her. She wants to be Luna. I asked, my heart contracting with hurt. Tomas shook his head. No. I think she had just given up on finding her mate. She's 25. It's unheard of for her to be this old and not find a mate around these parts. Not for she-wolves. She told me this morning she changed her mind though. He gave me a knowing look, even if she doesn't find her mate tonight, she would rather choose a man she loves than go with him. Then his eyes darkened as we saw a car coming up the drive. That's him. I told her to stay in her room until the run. I've gotten close to starting a war for the things he says to her. We don't need an altercation between the packs on a full moon. It's bad juju, I sighed. Great. I wouldn't see her until the full moon and to top it off, I would have to be nice to the man that made his intentions known to her. Gabriel came out and helped me move Celeste's trunk into one of the vehicles we were taking to the airport as Markus was supposedly distracting Celeste by keeping her inside. He and Atlas can't keep away from her for more than an hour before he's jonesing for her. Otto laughed, but I could feel the longing in his words too. We joined Celeste and Markus as they were coming out to greet the Alpha, Gabriel taking his stand right behind Celeste. I stood next to them while Tomas and Alpha Diego's Beta stood behind him. Alpha Diego, good to see you. Beta Raphael, Gamma Tomas, but where is your sister? I am hoping she finally changed her mind about being my Luna, he chuckled. I felt Otto wanting to growl, but felt Celeste's hand on my arm. I looked down at her. She asked me to tell you that she will be waiting for you in the maize field when the moon peaks, she said, and it made Otto jump hoops in my head. Thank you, I was all I could say. Alpha Markus, Luna Celeste. This is Alpha Josue. His pack is about an hour south of here. Markus extended his hand out but couldn't help the frown that formed on his face when Alpha Josue was staring at Celeste very intensely. I even saw Gabriel on edge at the look he was giving her. Alpha Josue didn't seem to notice. "You are Bella's daughter, are you not? I knew your mother, you know. I had a big crush on her growing up, but she wouldn't give me the time of day. You look so much like her," he said as he licked his lips, making Markus growl lowly at the disrespect. "Wouldn't you have been like 12 when she was here?" Celeste asked, looking bored, making people chuckle. This didn't seem to faze the Alpha. "I was mature for my age, and as future Alpha, I wanted the best. Shame she found your father and left. Maybe she'd still be alive," he said, and this made Celeste growl and all of us tense, ready to protect our Luna. "Alpha Josue, stop making a pregnant she-wolf angry. I will not let you hurt her, but I will not stop her from giving you a good kick in the balls to help her stress levels go back to normal," Alpha Diego said lazily. "Let us go sit and drink while we wait for the rest," he said, and I didn't miss the apologetic look he gave Celeste and Markus. The two other packs arrived and I was starting to feel claustrophobic inside the dining room. It seemed so was Celeste as I started noticing her become flushed by the minute. I heard Markus talk to the remaining alphas and then start to lead Celeste outside the pack house. I caught up to them as we made our way out. "Are you okay?" I asked. "Yes, just stifling in there," she said, then looked around to make sure weren't heard by anyone. "And I want to knee Alpha Josue in the nuts," she added, and even Gabriel laughed at this one. "Looks like they are about to start the run anyway," Markus said as we saw people start filtering out of the pack house. I looked up at the sky. The moon was almost out. "Go, man! We'll cover for you if anyone notices," Markus told me with a smile. I looked at Celeste and she was also smiling. "What do you two know?" I asked. "Just that you have a date and we couldn't be happier," Celeste said, pushing me towards the maize fields. "This conversation isn't over," I said as Otto made my feet walk away. He was too excited. Yeah. "We'll talk after," Markus said as he led Celeste towards the small stage. 3 minutes later, I was frustrated. The maize fields? This thing was huge and I couldn't see over the tops. How was I going to find her? I looked up at the sky as I heard multiple howls in the air and saw the moon was at its peak. I grumbled as I started walking around faster. Then, near the edge of the maize field, I smelled her most delicious smell of cookies and cream. Otto was going nuts in my head. I hurried to find the smell. Nose up in the air. I made it to the edge of the maze by the mountain wall and I saw her. She was glowing under the moon and it was like she was the moon. The moment our eyes met, I felt the sizzle of the bond snapping in place. I saw a few tears leave her face as she looked at me and I felt my joy diminish as a jolt of fear coursed through me. Why was she crying? Was she going to reject me? The thought had barely formed in my head before my heart sang as she ran towards me and jumped into my arms, burying her face in my neck. I crushed her to me as I felt more joy than I've ever felt in my life. I heard the howlings to the moon and Otto was itching under the skin. He wanted to run with his mate. Before I could do anything, I felt her canines push into my skin and mark me, taking both Otto and me by surprise. She pulled back and gave me a terrified look. "I'm so sorry. Lily pushed forward and I couldn't stop her. She's been waiting so long to find her mate and hated that I was going to accept Alpha Jose's prop. She stopped talking when I let Otto push forward a little. Turnabout is fair play, I said and crushed her to my chest. I kissed the spot on the crook of her neck before Otto and I bit into her skin, marking her forever ours. A feeling of joy filled every part of my heart as I felt all of her emotions crash into me. I turned my head towards the moon in thanks and howled. Let me run with Lily. Otto begged. As much as we both wanted to complete the mate bond, I knew both of our wolves deserved to run together under the moon goddess light. It would strengthen their bond. Run? I asked her. She smiled and nodded. We took our clothes off and shifted. Lily came up to us and purred. Follow us. We can catch up to the rest, I heard Camilla in my head and we followed after her, the bond allowing her to communicate with us.